So far we have checked all the user inputs, okay? And now we are ready to check the value of the errors variable. So if we have any errors, so if errors, okay, then we're gonna set our results message variable to a div, okay, so we're gonna give it a class alert danger. Okay. And we're going to place our errors variable inside. Okay, so we have single quotes there, so we can't just place it there. We have to add it. So, okay. Here we go. Okay. So let's check this. So let's submit the form with no values and see what we get. Okay, let's save and refresh. So now if we submit the form, okay, we haven't printed the results message, that's why we don't see anything. So let's echo results message and let's see what we get. So if I refresh this and submit the form with no values, then we can see our error message there. Okay, so we're missing first name, last name, email, and password. All right, so now we can write the code to execute if we have no errors. So else, meaning that we have no errors, then now we are ready to create a query which we're going to run in order to insert a record to inside our table. Okay. Okay, so now we have no errors, and we're going to do something that we call preparing variables for the query. Okay, so before we create the query, we're going to prepare all the variables. So we're going to need the table name, and that's going to be users. Okay, and for the other variables, we are going to escape any special characters in those variables. Okay, and for that we're going to use a function called mysqli underscore real underscore escape underscore string. Okay, mysqli real escape string. So this function is going to escape all special characters in a string before we use it for an SQL statement. Okay, so the way to use this function is by setting the new variable. So for example, first name is going to be the output of this function. All right. And this function is going to take as a parameter a couple of parameters. So the first parameter is going to be the connection variable, which is in our case link. Okay, and the second parameter is going to be the variable to escape. Okay, so which is first name. Okay, so we're gonna get the escaped version for first name now. And we're going to do the same thing for the last name. Okay. Okay, so you've got first name, last name. And we're going to do the same thing for the email. All right. And also the password. So regarding the password, to store the password in a secure way, we're not going to store the password in its original format, okay? Or its original form. So we're going to need to use a function which is going to calculate the hash of our password. So this function will return the hash as an hexadecimal number, and it's called MD5, okay? So you're going to add another step where password is going to be replaced with the output of this function, MD5. So this function is going to take as a parameter the password, and it's going to be to return the hash of the password. So let's just explore what this function is doing. So it will calculate the MD5 hash of a string, okay? And it's going to return the hash as a 32 character hexadecimal number, okay? So you need to make sure that we've got enough space in our table. And if you go to the table, we allowed 40 characters for the password, okay? If you allow less than 32, then only the first few are going to be stored on the in the table, and it's going to create problems, okay? Okay, so now that we have prepared our variables for the query, we are ready to create our query and execute it. So we're going to have a couple of cases depending on whether we have an ID input or not, okay? So we're going to have two queries depending on whether we have the ID or not. So let's write execute insert query. So we're going to use an insert query because we're inserting a record in our table, and we're going to check first if we are missing the ID inputs. So you're going to go to the post variable. I'm going to check the element of key ID. So if we're missing that, then we're going to have the following query. So we're going to call it SQL, the variable, and we are going to insert into our table users, okay, everything apart from the ID. So we're going to insert the first name. Let's make sure we get it all correct. So we're going to insert the first name, last name, email, and password, okay? And we're going to be inserting the values. So make sure that every single value is between single quotes. You're going to have 4. So the first value is going to be the value of the first name, and then the second one is the value of the last name, and then the email, and then the password. Okay. And that's if we don't have an ID input. If we have an ID input, so else, so this is going to be slightly different. And the difference is going to be the extra field that we're going to input, and which is going to be the ID. And for the value, we're going to have the variable ID. Okay, we already identified a variable ID at the beginning, actually. So, okay, so we can replace post ID using this variable ID in our code. So if we are missing ID. Okay. So now we've got our query ready to be executed. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's execute our query. So we're gonna use the function mysqli underscore query, which takes a couple of parameters. Okay, the connection object, link, and the query, SQL. Okay, so rather than using the function like this, we are going to check the outputs of the function. So if condition as the output of this function, then our results message is going to be a success div. Okay, let's use single quotes, and we're gonna write inside our div data added successfully to the database table. And let's style our div using the alerts and alert success classes. Okay. And right after this, we need to echo the result message. Okay. Otherwise, if there was any problem, then we're gonna say else. We are going to set our results message to another value. So you're going to use alert warning, and this time we're going to say error enable to execute, and we write the name of the or the value of the query, which is SQL. Okay, we can't do that because we're using single quotes, so we're just going to add this. Okay, and then we're going to add the error. Okay. And the error is going to be mysqli underscore error. It's going to be the output of this function, which will take as a parameter our connection objects. Okay. And let's add this to that. Okay. And finally, we need to echo the result message as well. We could have only one statement for echoing the result message right at the end, because in all cases we are echoing it. But anyway, let's leave it like this for now and test it. So let's go back to our page, refresh. Okay, so if we submit a first name, Peter, for example, and last name Tyler, an email peter@gmail.com, for example, and then a password. And if you click on send data, okay, so we've got a warning message there saying unable to execute this query. So let's check what's wrong with the query. Okay, so are we missing S in the first name? First, and the same here. Okay, so let's try again. So Peter, Tyler. Okay, let's give it an email and a password. Let's send data. Okay, so data added successfully to the database table. So now let's check that in our table. So okay, we need to log in again. Hello, developers 1. Oh. Okay, so if we access our table, oops. Okay, I need to log in again for some reason. So if I access the table now, it looks like something is wrong. Again. Okay, so now if we go to SQL and then click on Go, then we can see the details inside our table, and you can see a new record there. Okay, we can try again to add another record. So let's give it this time an ID 7, and let's give it a first name, George, for example, and the last name Casper, and an email @gmail.com, and a password. And if we send the data, so data added successfully. Let's check, and we can see the new record there. Okay, and just one thing, you can see that we've got our password encoded there as a 32 character. It's in hexadecimal format. Okay, so that's how we can populate our table using an HTML form. Okay, in the next video, we're going to learn how to retrieve data from our table.